So, hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Elizabeth Milovidov, and I am a lawyer, a law professor, child online protection expert, and basically I provide resources to digital parents and caregivers. And what was the question? Just an
Just
introduction, or what
just
else?
tell me about who you are, what work you're doing, and
Yeah.
how you're raising awareness in this space.
Sure. So I think that I pretty much sort of decided on my own to start creating awareness for digital families about this topic, just because as I was talking with teens and talking with families, kept hearing all sorts of things about like OnlyFans or what's happening on social media, or just a lot of misogyny and the hypersexualization of, for example, video gaming avatars. And I'm just like, really? What's going on here? And so I sort of understood that parents and caregivers, they were feeling really ill-equipped to handle a lot of things in for digital parenting in general. But when you added in this extra layer, if you will, of this pornified media specifically, I mean, they just kind of, were really throwing up their hands. And so my mission is sort of shifted a little bit slightly, and I said, you know what, I've got to find some tools to help them out. And so I found your parent program, the Culture Reframed Parents Program, which is just something that I still use to this day, to share with parents, to give them those conversation starters, to give them the resources to actually help them have those conversations with their children, tweens, and young people, the conversations that nobody really wants to have, but that is absolutely necessary and vital to have, not just with, the young women, but with the young men. And as a mommy to two teen boys, it is just absolutely it, I don't even know what the word is, pertinent for me to
Yeah.
to educate them on this sort of online awareness for others. So that's pretty
Mhm.
much who I am and what I do. And I've also been a champion for Cultural Reframed.
Mhm.
Um, Working with yourself and Dr. Gail Dines for just a number of years trying to create awareness. I'm here in London now, and I've been doing a lot of things in France. I was happy to see Cecile. So I will always
Mhm.
continue to be an ambassador for your work because until it's no longer necessary. And let's hope that
Right.
we can get there soon.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. Christy, we'll go on to you. I feel like I know so much about you, so I'm so excited to have you share with the rest of our participants today about you and your work.
Oh, thank you so much, Mandy.
Mm.
My name's Christy Keating. I'm the founder and CEO of the Heartful Parent Collective, which includes Savvy Parents, Safe Kids. And My background is I am also a lawyer. I spent nearly 20 years working as a criminal prosecutor in the Seattle area. And my specialty towards the latter part of my career was prosecuting first what I'll call your average run-of-the-mill sex offender, and then later prosecuting sexually violent predators, which were sort of the most serious repeat offenders that we were dealing with. And obviously, a lot of the a lot of the crimes that we were prosecuting involved crimes against children, crimes against adults as well. But the crimes against children, as a parent myself, just really, um,
Mm.
you know, were tough to work with. And sort of that background coupled with me becoming a parent myself, and just thinking parents need more support than they're getting. We just the U.S. Surgeon General, for those who are not U.S. based, in August released an advisory sort of sharing that like the stress, the state of parents is not a healthy one right now.
Yeah.
Parents are really, really struggling with a lack of support and a lack of understanding for sort of this new world that we are all navigating. And so the work that I do at the Heartful Parent Collective as a certified parent coach, as a positive discipline educator, and as a child sexual abuse prevention expert and advocate, is really designed to support parents from all those different angles. And I'm a big believer that every child has the right to grow up both brain safe and body safe. And so all the work that I do really promotes that. And so the primary ways that I've been, do you want me to go into that, Mandy? The primary
Yeah.
ways that, yeah,
Yeah.
that I've been doing that. Um, is really four predominant ways. And one is I have a membership for parents, which I think is the only platform out there, only membership platform for parents that addresses both brain safety, which is a positive discipline, really relationship-based parenting, which, we talked about a little bit in the keynote this morning, the importance of relationship with our children, and then also addresses the body safe piece of parenting, which is how do we talk to kids about sex, right? How do we, even begin those conversations? At what ages do we begin those conversations? And then how do we recognize predatory behavior, both in person and online, which the overlap is pretty profound. And really what parents need to know is the same in both of those spaces. So that membership supports parents with that. I also have hosted 2 international summits that are specifically designed for parents, called the Safe Parenting Summit. Was really honored that in the first year of the summit, Dr. Gail Dines spoke, and in our second year, Dr. Sanchez spoke, as a way of really getting the word out to parents. And the first year we had, so combined between the 2 years, we've had about 16,000 parents, I think, attend those 2 summits. We'll be hosting another one in 2026. And so, again, just another way of trying to get as much information into the hands of parents as possible about all aspects of safety, but certainly pornography, and the impacts that it's having on our youth has been a big part of that each year. The third primary way is I host the Heartful Parent podcast, and we cover a lot of different topics, but I definitely try to have conversations and guests in there. Dr. Sanchez has been on the podcast as well, just as a way of, again, getting information to parents where they're at and in a way that feels accessible, non-threatening, and really gives them actionable tools. And then I also do a lot of public speaking around safety, and I in recent years have started bringing more and more information and awareness to the problems that pornography provide or give us, and really that those are an avenue towards abuse, as I see it. It's abuse in and of itself, and then is also a mechanism that many predators use to desensitize kids and use it for predatory behavior and criminal behavior. So that's kind of what I'm doing on my end of things.
Is that all? Thank you so much, Christy. I'm going to move to Lola, who I've had the pleasure of knowing for the last few years as well, and to talk about her and her organization and all of the amazing things that you do at Digital for Good, and I Can Help.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lola Bessis. I am the liaison manager for Digital for Good. Personally, I just graduated from my undergraduate, where I focused my undergraduate research on rape prevention on college campuses. And I'm on the journey to start my PhD, where I will focus on the sex tourism industry and its harms on women. At Digital for Good, we focus on educating parents about digital citizenship, safety, and wellness. We have interactive all-school presentations where we empower students to navigate the digital world responsibly. The presentations are more impactful than standard workshops because we engage entire student bodies in really meaningful conversations about their online behavior. And we also address issues through virtual and in-person parent presentations for school districts. And when a school hires us for a presentation, we ensure that the parents across all their schools are educated on these critical topics. It's kind of a holistic approach that helps create a unified front with educators and parents in guiding the youth. Additionally, we have a really great video team that does an excellent job in sharing information content on our social media platforms. We're all student run. And this not only raises awareness, but also enriches our curriculum and provides students and parents with accessible resources to understand and combat various online issues that the youth are dealing with.
Fantastic. And it just has such a wonderful reach and really youth centered. So I really appreciate your organization. So I'm going to move into another question, and we can start with Elizabeth for this one. But talking about parents' primary concerns when it comes to those that you work with, those that you are educating, what are their primary concerns, and how do you address them?
Yes. So I think my work is really interesting in that obviously because I'm doing it, so I must love it. But
Right.
it's really interesting in the way that because I'm focused on social media, online video games, and just internet in general, and devices and the experiences, I still have this intersection with obviously pornography and because like I said I'm looking at this so differently and so broadly that it is really amazing how it just creeps up into every little section of what I do. So for example, parents are concerned with early exposure to pornography, right? So we know that our children are seeing pornography, encountering pornography accidentally or via online searches or through social media at an earlier and younger ages, right? And we know that this is causing problems. This kind of exposure, it's distorting their understanding of consent, relationships, body image, how to treat women, how to treat men. These are some of the things that we've heard the other panel before me. There's also this normalization, of course, of hypersexualized content. So we've seen that the imagery, the behaviors, you see this with some of the social media influencers, the people who are out there, actually speaking to our children the most. Some of the things that they are talking about and advocating are just horrific. There's the unrealistic body standards, both for women and men, young girls and young boys. And social media can do a lot to emphasize, provocative poses and clothing and the content creators who are targeting these young audiences. And so these are some of the things that parents mention. They mention the impacts of relationship and consent because they do hear some of these things just because of how their children are engaging with social media. And let's not forget that old time standard of just peer pressure, sexting, right? I mean, because these things are just not going away, no matter how much we try to keep educating our children. I don't get it. I mean, I think it was Pew Internet Research that did studies a few years ago showing that teens know in some circumstances that it is inappropriate, some states even illegal, to share this type of imagery, and they do it anyway. So there are all sorts of risks that are reputational, legal, emotional. And I think that if I would mention just one more challenge that I see regularly with parents, and it's just this idea that they feel unprepared. They are just saying, this is this is not what I want to talk about. This is so discomforting. I remember when my parents talked to me about the birds and the bees, and then they sit there and they go on to how am I supposed to talk about OnlyFans? How am I supposed to talk about, what can happen on Snapchat or any other social media platform where you can be lured off to go see other things, or even in some of the video games to see young girls, earning money in online video gaming currency. These are the things that parents are just they're hearing more and more about, and my world has definitely merged into your world, and it's
Yeah.
something that I think it really is going to take so much more for us to get this lift to really help parents because it already at that baseline just for, again, social media, online video games, trying to understand, parental limits and parental controls on an iPhone, a tablet, a computer. Parents are already, at the wall. And when you
Yeah.
add in this extra layer of complexity and actually that's absolutely even more necessary than the parental controls. This is when I really hope that this webinar and that these messages get out and we realize that this is a cry, an alert, and we need to do more and we need to do it now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Very well said. Thank you. And Christy, what are you seeing from parents? What are they sharing with you about their main concerns? And then how do you attempt to address those?
Yeah, it's such a good question. And I have to say, I think there's a lot of lack of awareness. I mean, they're hearing things as Elizabeth just said, they're hearing things and um and they're aware that there's these sort of things circling out there. But a lot of parents, even though we are on our devices as well, are not on our devices in the same way that our kids are on their devices. And so a lot of parents don't really understand the way that kids are using these devices, or even how to sort of dive into that world with their kids. And so I think when you ask the question, like, what are parents worried about? I think in many cases, parents aren't always worried about the things that they need to be worried about because they don't know what's out there. And so the first job that many of us have is just bringing the awareness of what is going on. And, I think where parents are sort of tuning in, or a lot of the things that I'm hearing sort of in my spaces are just the prevalence of kids being online in general, right? And social media in general. I know there have been valid critiques, but there have been a lot of books coming out lately. The Anxious Generation was a big one that caught a lot of parents' attention. And so people are kind of cluing into that, but not realizing. They're saying, well, social media is a problem, but they're not realizing, as Dr. Dines was mentioning earlier, sort of the link between social media and where that leads us in terms of pornography. And so there's a missing link, is what I'm hearing from parents. Where I am hearing concerns, in addition to social media, is the prevalence of school computers and the fact that the kids are being required now to do everything online just to complete their schoolwork. I'm seeing this as a parent, and it's really distressing because I can, put limits on devices that we own to the extent that we're able to actually do that, right? Which, all the various companies are trying to prevent us from doing that. But I can take the phone, or the whatever device physically away from my child for a day or whatever. But the school computers, I cannot manage. And I was recently in contact with my own child's school about, what limits can I put on this? And the answer really is none. And I do hear from parents, an alarming number of parents, whose children have accessed pornography on those school computers, despite being, reassured repeatedly by schools. And I know they're up against a battle as well. This isn't to blame the schools, but uh, they're reassured, parents are reassured that there are all sorts of protections on these devices. And the reality is that those just aren't always effective. They don't always work. And so kids are accessing really concerning content on a computer that was given to them by their school, which parents just feel really at a loss about how to handle and how to protect.
I heard a dreadful story about a private school that bought a program on how to teach, I think it was Spanish. And they said, and it was private to the school from the company. And they said within 20 minutes, they had predators online looking for the kids on there. So, I mean, in a way, schools do have a duty to protect their kids. Why are they not doing that?
Yeah.
Oh, that's such a big question, Gail.
I mean,
Why are they not doing that?
Educators panel, but I'm interested to know for you who deal with parents.
Yeah, I don't know. There are free programs out there, right? There are things that can help them. I'm not saying any of them are bomb-proof, but there are resources out there. Bark, for example, is one of them that has a program that is free to schools that they could be putting on devices to help protect, and most of them don't. And I don't know if it's a personnel issue that, the modern monitoring on the back end, if it's a lack of awareness. I think there's a lot of different issues, reasons that play into that, but it's definitely an issue. And both from a pornography standpoint, which of course we're talking about primarily today, but also just from an attention and distraction issue for our kids, which is you know, is really problematic. And I see it with my own kids, where, you know, YouTube, which of course we know where YouTube can go, all sorts of bad places. But it's right there on the device. And
But I think if I can jump in, Christy, yeah, I
yeah,
think that you're spot on, and it's, you know, so much of it is just right there on the device. And back to your question, Gail, you know, what can schools do? I can tell you that when my boys in the French system, we were in Paris. Yes, there were acceptable use policies. Yes, responsible use policies. You know, that we hand out to the parent, to the child. But I think that what we keep forgetting is that even, and I just saw somebody talking about, yes, bark notifications, that they get hundreds of those daily. It doesn't matter if we lock down that iPad or that smartphone. What matters is what happens on somebody else's. So we really need to get to the root of it, which is teaching our children how to say no, how to say, oh no, I can't see that, or my parents would kill me if I saw that, or I don't want to see that. Because, you know, we can try to lock down the devices, and I've seen this, and I can give you an example. Like again, Celine is on the call, so I just want to point this one out because it's a French example. So, you know, here we were in school, and they had just given my child iPads, tablets, and they had put some sort of parental control on it. And so my child innocently went to go and do research on the sans culotte, which means without breeches, and was the peasants in the 18th century. Well, sans culotte also means without underwear. And so that meant that instead of seeing 18th century peasants and the bourgeoisie, we got to see images of Paris Hilton getting out of various cars in various states of undress. And this just, you know, popped up. So there is a moment when it became a teaching moment for me to go in and speak to my son about this, and then of course to go in and talk to the school. But I think, Gail, these things are going to continue, and they're going to continue with AI. Now that we have AI, that it can, you know, be chat girlfriends and boyfriends. And so we really have to get to the base of it, which is, you know, giving children and young people strategies to say no, to say I'm not interested, or, you know, okay, I'll look at it later, maybe, and you know, go find a trusted adult.
Right. And I love that. And it's a perfect segue to my direction of a question to Lola about how are youth advocating for those safer digital spaces? Because we're talking about, you know, educating parents to give them resilience and resistance to either say no or say, you know, to say, oh, my parents would kill me, or that's not okay, I'll get in trouble at school. But how do you see youth actually taking the lead here? It's something that Jason mentioned in his keynote address about youth taking the charge there and advocating for spaces. So what do they need, and how are they doing this?
Well, first of all, I personally working at Digital for Good, as I said, we're students. And so 22, I work with a lot of high schoolers who join our company because they're passionate about this and they want to do this work and understand the harms of social media. They're experiencing it and they want to find solutions, and we're one of them. And youth are actively advocating for safer digital spaces by becoming what we call digital first responders, which means that we train students to be digital responders by equipping them with the skills to recognize, report, and address inappropriate or harmful content. This is a peer approach that empowers students to take immediate action when they encounter issues online. I'll give a quick example. We had a student that we trained go and tell their parents about something called Sexy AI, where they could ask the AI sex.
Into frozen.
Oh no.
Oh no, Lola, come back. That was so
Come
interesting.
back. Okay, we're gonna check on Lola and see if she can come. Oh, there you are, Lola.
Pardon.
You come back. You ended with sexy AI and talking about that example. So can you elaborate on that?
Yes. So Sexy AI is kind of this new platform where you can go in and ask questions about sex, but there's currently no age verification on it. And so once we were made aware of this, we notified our sources and were able to draft some sort of policy where you have to enter your age to enter the website. This isn't a foolproof method, but it is a blocker just like when you try and enter smoking or alcohol websites. What youth need is continued support. They need mentorship and platforms to amplify their voices. If we keep providing these resources, trainings, opportunities for real world impact, we're going to empower them to drive meaningful change in their digital communities and contribute to the creation of safer online environments in general.
That's wonderful. I love that. I do every time we talk to parents and they tell us about youth. It's so motivating and it's so hopeful to hear that youth are actually resisting this as well. So I think that it's amazing to hear that.
Mandy,
So I want to. Oh,
can I add
go ahead.
something to that just really
Yeah,
quickly?
absolutely.
Because it's incredible when we see young people who are taking up
Yeah.
the charge on this. And at the same time, I just want to sort of reiterate or drive home the importance of us as parents and educators and activists doing our piece at the back end, because,
Yeah.
you know, there's a difference, for example, between a 16-year-old and their ability to advocate for themselves and an 8-year-old and their ability to advocate for themselves. And if we were talking about in-person child sexual abuse, we would never say to an 8-year-old, it's your responsibility to prevent that from happening to you. Right? We would never blame a child for being the victim of abuse, right? In a real life, in-person sort of scenario. And yes, we do need to give kids skills and we need to be talking to them in non-frightening ways, which is, you know, one of the things I do. But we also have to recognize the power differential, right? The power dynamic that's at play. And so while we have to give them information and skills and tools and teach them to say no and resist, we all have to keep doing our piece as the adults at the back end, because it's not these kids' fault when something happens, right? Online or in person.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Such a great point. Yeah, such a great point.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Before we kind of conclude, and we do have some time, but I want to weave in some questions that we are getting in the chat. So this is a question that I often get, and it's usually in the form of a couple people coming afterwards in a presentation and talking about co-parenting. This is a really real situation, and the question from the chat is: are others finding an issue with parents who are struggling to co-parent with one parent not monitoring children's online activity and the other parent trying to implement or provide safe limits? So the question kind of ended with, are there family court systems addressing this, or what should we do to try to address the co-parenting? One parent's going to let them have, you know, Fortnite and just unrestricted access, and the other isn't. How do parents negotiate that?
I'll just go quickly with something that I share with a lot of digital families and digital family structures, because you're right, sometimes it's not always parents, it's guardians and caregivers and grandparents, etc. And one of the things that I always try to make sure is that we really keep the child at the center of that conversation. And I think it's the same thing that anyone who's doing any sort of mediation between families, is that if the parents are and the guardians are really thinking about, sorry, hate to say it, the best interest of the child, then they will be able to come together. And sometimes it becomes this sort of, you know, my house, my tech rules. But I think that there are ways to sort of, you know, negotiate on a sliding scale, because really we have to do what we can immediately to help these young people.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I would just add, I'm not seeing, when we get to the point of expecting the court system to be the ones to mediate this,
yeah,
we're in a bad place. It's not equipped to do that, and will give a lot of deference to parents in their own homes. And to be clear, we see this in, you know, parents that are still married, living in the same home, who have different tech rules for their children, or different ideas about this. And so I love what Elizabeth just said about really centering the kids in this. And I also really encourage parents to, the phrase that I use is parent with the end in mind, which is, what are the long-term goals that we want for these children as they go out into the world? And how do we parent now for what we want then?
Right.
And Randy,
Christy,
can
oh,
I,
go
oh,
ahead.
I'm sorry. Yeah, can I also
No,
just
go ahead.
say, because I think it's so powerful that Lola is here, and I really want to
Mhm.
do another shout out for Digital for Good, because I think it's so important to realize that there are also role models there that
Mhm.
parents can use, following the website.
Yeah, yeah.
I was muted for a second.
That's okay.
Maybe they didn't want me to stop saying Lola, Lola, how wonderful you are, but I'm going to say it. And I think that parents and caregivers also have to realize to involve their teen in those
Yeah.
conversations. I
Mhm.
know that we don't want to talk about these things, and I know it. I'm a mom to two boys. Do you think I want to, talk about some of these things? I do not.
Same.
But I do. I do. I
Mhm.
do. And
Mhm.
so I think that, by talking with them, that sort of, you know, I won't say it demystifies, but it just makes things takes
Mhm.
it to a different level. And I think there was a question in there about, do you speak to your children? Do you tell parents about speaking about pleasure? You know what? I am taking that one on board, and I will say,
Mhm.
talk to me in a week when I speak with my boys, because I do think it's another important aspect that needs to be brought into the conversation, not just consent, but also pleasure.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That was definitely a question in the chat about how are we incorporating conversations about pleasure with parents and helping children knowing that what nourishing pleasure feels like in the body. That was
Yeah.
yeah.
And it is something that I encourage parents to talk about with their kids, because sex and intimacy can be a really beautiful, important, it is a really beautiful and important
Mhm.
part of our lives if we allow it to be that. And so
Right.
and I think there have been some comments in the chat, and Jason just posted the rum framework.
Yeah.
But I think it's really important to take the shame out of it, because as soon as shame gets brought into the conversation, really all productive conversation stops with our kids, right? And they are
Right.
sexual beings from the time that they are born. And
Mhm.
we have to acknowledge that and give them space for that and not be afraid of it. And so one of the questions that I often start with parents is, it's hard to think about with your own children. I know that. But if you think about, what do you want for your child in terms of them, their relationships as they grow, and their relationship to sex as they grow. And if we can think about, again, that's parenting with the end in mind, and it makes it easier to have those conversations now.
I think one
Absolutely.
of the things our culture does is it disembodies young people. That rather than being in their body, they see themselves from outside the body because they're so used to rating on TikTok and all the others, is that disembodiment. And I would love to see schools take that on as well, as how do you get re-embodied in a society that is built on the disembodiment? And I think if pornography and hypersexualization does anything, we know from studies, it really teaches girls how to self-objectify. And
Mhm.
the question is, what does pleasure look like when you're self-objectifying? So, do you know of any organizations or any curricula or anything out there where they're talking about pleasure and embodiment? Because these are really critical things, because we're always, when we get to these conferences, we're always talking, as we should be, about the harms. But I mean, how do we switch that around for kids to see the pleasures that they can get from not
Mhm.
doing this, that there's something to be had for it? It's not just about telling them off, or which we shouldn't be doing, or shaming them. It's about giving them a view of their bodies as their own, something to develop, something to think about, something to appreciate and get to know. So is anyone doing this kind of work, I mean, out there?
They don't only do this, but they do offer some courses more on consent and like women, like a lot of focus on young women, but they're called Safe Bay. And they work a lot
Mhm.
with survivors, and we've collaborated with them as well. But they do a lot of great curriculums with, I believe, high schoolers on
Yeah.
just embodiment and I mean, last year Mandy and I were on a panel with
Yeah.
them, but yeah, they do some good work as well.
Yeah, we'll definitely put the link to Safe Bay and that organization in the chat. They're phenomenal, really, really great. Okay, so let's see if I do have one more question that came in the chat, and it was directed to Christy. So we'll start with her first, but then anyone can jump in. So, how do you help parents understand the risks of online sexual violence and exploitation without overemphasizing stranger danger, since we know that most abuse is perpetrated by someone who knows the victim?
Yeah, such a good question. And it's something that I feel like I try to shout from the rooftops, because we know that whether we're talking about, in-person abuse or online abuse, it really over 90% of child sexual abuse happens at the hands of someone that is known to the child or to the parent or both. And so the phrase stranger danger is a really dangerous phrase. I think it's a very dangerous phrase, because it really puts blinders on us, right? When all we're worrying about is the creepy guy in the white van, or the random person, on the internet. We're not paying attention to where we really need to be paying attention to. And so the language that I give parents to use from the time they have like little kids, right, 4 or 5, as we start to really establish basic body safety rules, and the idea that we really want our kids to understand that they have the right to be safe, right? They have the right to be safe.
Right.
Is the phrase I use is tricky people. And the way I explain tricky people to parents and to kids is, it can be a man, a woman, any gender, right? It can be any gender. It can be young, old, right? Any age. It can be someone that we know a lot, someone that we know a little, someone that we don't know at all. It can be a friend, a family member, right? The neighbor next door, or the guy in the white van. It really can be anyone. And the way that we identify who a tricky person is someone who tries to get us to violate one of those safety rules. And that really opens up takes the blinders off, and lets us be aware that it could be someone in our own home. It could be someone at school. Or it could be someone who's reaching out on the internet and that we think we're building a relationship with. And it, so what I teach parents and kids to do is look out for those safety violating behaviors and those red flag behaviors. And that's how we get around stranger danger. Because the phrase has done us no favors.
Yeah.
I think it's also been complicated by the fact that now a lot of the grooming is done online, and you think you know the person. You think you're talking to someone the same age as you. They don't seem like a stranger to you. They seem like a friend. They're very good at finding out your vulnerabilities and helping you, so-called helping you through them. So the whole concept of stranger danger, it doesn't really sort of hold in the time of internet predatory behaviors as well. I think that's the other.
Yeah.
And on that note, so I'll just jump in. There's Digital for Good this year has really tried to focus and create curriculum around sextortion, because we were getting more and more and more reports of it. And especially with young boys who are talking to women online and have that sense of validation and share photos of themselves, and then find themselves getting, they get asked for money. And if they can't send them money, that person threatens to share that photo with their family and everybody in their contacts. And so we're really training parents on how to see the signs of sexploitation, when the child starts retreating, to understand also what to do about it, to not shame the child in sending the picture, but in trying to work with the child and, okay, what do we do next? We have to block the person right away. We have to contact the authorities. And there's no shame in it, because if you put the shame, then you add that sexual shame, and the child will retreat even more.
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic. Elizabeth, did you want to say something there?
No, I did not.
Okay.
I think Lola said it so wonderfully.
So good.
And I know I did see that somebody had put in the comments that so many parents have not heard that word. But what I found more empowering was that Lola did say sextortion. And then I know that we as child online protection, we always try to say, the financial coercion, sexual coercion. We just say all these big long words, and it's just like, call it what it is.
Right.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have about a minute left, and I would love to just, for each of you to give us a 30-second, where do we need to go from here? What is some, actionable tools or steps that we need to take with this ginormous industry?
Oh, I'm going to go first. I'm
Go
jumping in
ahead.
right away. And I'm going to say exactly the thing that just comes to heart, which is go talk to your kids, talk to your young people and get that conversation going. And if you need any help, then you go onto Digital for Good, you find Lola. If you need any more help, then you go into Culture Reframed and you do that parenting program. And if you need more help, you go listen to the Heartful podcast, because really the resources are there.
Yeah. Fantastic.
I,
Christy?
yeah, Elizabeth really said exactly what I was going to say, which is that
Mhm.
we need to be talking to our kids. So I think then the next step after that, once we talk to our own children, is to also be in communication with the other parents around us and invite them into the conversation, because we really can have a sort of cultural movement if we put our energy and effort into it, where if I'm talking to, I'm raising two daughters. If I talk to the friends, my daughter's friends' parents and say, hey, are you seeing this? Then we're, excuse me, then we're bringing more awareness that this is even an issue. And yeah, Lola, Elizabeth, I mean, so many people on the call today are on this, in this conference, are incredible resources that can follow up with the amazing stuff that Culture Reframed is providing for everyone.
Thank you. Lola?
I have also been thinking about what we were talking about, how do we talk to our children and in a positive way about their bodies and what to say. And I think something that is so important is to emphasize that you are more than your sexual value. And I think that a lot of youth need to hear that. I was talking to a friend who said to me, complaining about his little sister on TikTok, he said TikTok teaches the youth one thing, and it's how to be sexual. And so I think that we really need to emphasize that to children about their, you are intelligent, you have hobbies, you have other things besides your sexuality. Although your sexuality is not bad or anything to be ashamed of, right? It's finding that balance, but still cultivating their interests and being present for them in their lives.